Hello everyone, this is Dare Skybound bringing you another tutorial video. Today we're discussing Gil and how to make money in Final Fantasy XIV, as well as, of course, how to actually get rich. Yeah, you can. So today we'll cover 4 key areas: dungeons, gathering, crafting, the market, as well as other additional smaller ways, which are no way just lesser or make less Gil. They can actually make even more Gil. So we'll cover all those today, and then you can decide which way is right for you when making Gil. So the first way to make Gil is the most simple and something that everyone's going to be doing: dungeons. At higher levels, monsters, bosses, and completing the dungeon will get you a lot of Gil. And if you do roulettes, you can get bonus Gil every day for a healthy amount. The problem is time. Doing dungeons takes a long time, but it's something that everyone will be making Gil on. So what you're probably looking for is other ways to make Gil. One common way to make money with dungeons, however, is the tomestones. When you have excess of tomestones, you can usually buy some items you can sell in the marketplace, particularly crafting items. These are items that crafters might not have done a lot of dungeons for and still require. And if it's relevant content, you can actually get quite a bit of Gil for it. So it's something to consider. So next on our list is gathering. It's probably the most obvious way to make Gil. You find items for practically nothing and you sell them. Crafters need them. You might find some important items for minions or supplies or just some other necessity that people need. So gathering is just go out, get it, get Gil. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It can be depending on the market for what the supply and demand is, but legitimately, gathering is the most simple way to make Gil. Now there's also the matter of scripts to consider. Scripts are the gathering and crafting form of tomestones. So gathering and getting gathering scripts can actually be a form of getting items that you can sell in the marketplace, or even some more crafting goods to sell to crafters. And that can be a really big boon because they're generally worth more than the dungeon tomestones are as far as the items you can buy with them are worth. Third on our list is crafting. It's probably the most talked about, thought about, and most obvious when it comes to making Gil. You process items to make something somebody else wants. Some of these items are worth a lot of Gil, but there's a drawback. They might also require really rare, hard to come by, or really expensive parts to craft with. The fundamental key to making Gil through crafting is to get your materials as cheap as possible. If you can basically get cheap materials, you can make that item for almost no cost. Some of the early crafting materials can actually be bought from vendors, making early crafting actually very lucrative if you know what you're making and know what you're selling. Selling high quality, low gear can actually be one of the best ways to make Gil because of the low overhead cost. There's actually a lot of benefits to producing lower level gear. The materials are easier to source, therefore cheaper, and it's a lot easier to produce high quality items because you can easily out-level them. There's also a lot of demand for lower level gear. Most of the heavier crafters have gone producing current level gear and forgotten about the low level gear. But everybody, since they can basically play any class, will go back and need this gear for their lower level classes. And they have all this Gil they made from running dungeons with their main classes. So when you make low-level gear, you can actually expect it to sell very quickly. It's cheaper, it's easier, and everybody needs it. In fact, you can make a fortune of Gil just by looking for overlooked items. Things like crafter tools, armor, weapons, something that somebody needs that no crafter has remembered to craft for them. You can practically set your own price, but set it lower because you got to think about who you're selling it to. Sell in mass quantities, but you can sell them cheaper. That is the key to selling these items and making a fortune. Another hot item you can sell for crafting is actually housing items. There's a lot of them out there that people want or need that are underproduced and cheap to make, but most forget about making them. So it's another kind of overlooked item. Also, when a new housing area comes out, people are going to buy new houses and they're going to want to furnish them. So if you produce housing items and sell at the right time, You'll make a complete fortune that you weren't even aware you could make. Another really great way to make gil is through producing materials. If the sum of the parts is cheaper than the finished product, you can make a profit. You can even buy items off the market that are cheaper and produce them to a more finished product that is still used for crafting and sell in large quantities. In fact, a lot of these items don't even need to be high quality to sell well, so there's a lot of room for making profit. And finally, there are crafting scripts. Just like gatherer scripts, you can use this to acquire items that can be sold for a lot of gil. Even if you don't craft with them, you can make gil just selling the crafting goods you get from crafting scripts. There's also secondary items that can be sold for a profit. So our fourth category is the marketplace. It's pretty obvious. Buy low, sell high. This usually works when there's a patch or an expansion coming out, but a lot of times the profit margins are gigantic. One example is that before Stormblood, there was a dungeon called the Diadem. Nowadays, few people know of it, but you can get one minion in there particular called the Hunting Hawk. Just before Stormblood launched, a lot of people bought out the Hunting Hawks on the market board for about 400,000 gil each. After launch of Stormblood, no one went to the Diadem, and these minions raised in price to over 4 million each. Eventually this price was basically met by being put into newer content, so you can get the Hunting Hawk in ways other than the Diadem. But the period between the Diadem and Heaven on High, where the minion was reintroduced, the price was astronomical. So if you buy the right item before an expansion or a brand new patch, you can sell it for a lot more. Ultimately, the market is where you're going to be making your profits, so it's important to check the prices. Know what you're going to sell, know what makes money, check for overlooked items that you can actually sell for more than they're normally worth. And then of course also check materials. If you can check materials, you can probably see if there's something you can make with it that can give you a big profit based on cheaper materials. In the end, when it comes to the market, just knowing where all the prices are and what you're after is just the most important. As long as you have the proper goal, you can make your effort to make a profit through that. But don't ever over-concentrate. If you flood the market with your own items, they become worthless and competitors will just jump in. Diversify and sell on multiple fronts, and that's how you can make your gil. And finally, our fifth category is making gil through various other methods. These aren't as big as the others, but there's tons of ways to make gil. The first I've already kind of talked about a little bit. That is doing old content, such as the Diadem, and getting materials from there that you couldn't otherwise get. It's a good way to just get items that are in low supply, and thus have a higher demand, and so you can make a lot of gil off that. Another area I've briefly touched on is timing. If a new housing area is coming out in the next patch, you can expect furniture to be worth a lot more, so that's when you should sell furniture. With the new coming expansion of Shadowbringers, we are at least guaranteed that we're having a new tank class come out that starts at level 60. So level 65 tank gear will be worth a lot, since a lot of people will be trying that class. So understanding timing, expansions, and patches is a key way to make a profit. Another more simple way to make a profit is simply reselling. Find things from vendors that people are just too lazy to go hunt down or purchase and sell it for a higher price. Weathered weapons, the level 1 starter weapons, are actually at a good price in the market usually because people can't be bothered to find them. They'll have to travel to that city-state, find the item, and buy it. When instead they just want to buy it off any market board they're at and change classes so they can just get started on their new adventure. One way that's open to everybody, regardless of class, is beast tribes and other organizational type things in the game that give you a different kind of currency. You can spend these on items that are tradable and then enter them to the market, especially beast tribe items. Sometimes there's a daily requirement and a lot of work, and they can be really valuable. And these items can then be sold in the market for a profit. You can even do fates for Grand Company seals, and then use that to buy items and sell those in the market. It's a very broad way of making gil. And last but not least, the way that I personally like to make a lot of gil, Desynthesis. This is actually a lesser known crafting system. In Desynthesis, you can actually break down items for part of the production. So if the sum of the parts costs more than the final product, you can actually get more money out of breaking down an item that is usually worthless. You can even get additional items that might be just something you can vend for a bit of gil, or actually even get these very powerful crafting material called demi-material. These are crafting components that you get from breaking down various items that are worn by crafters or disciples of magic and war, depending on which. They are usually used to craft high-level items and have been used in each patch, so they usually have a continuous value going about them. Though clear demi-materia can only be sold for gil, the Fieldcraft and Battlecraft demi-materia of 3 grades each can be used in various crafts, and they'll basically cost differently as new crafts are introduced and basically others are made obsolete. So they have a fluctuating value in that sense, but they're always worth something. But even if you don't consider the demi-materia, you can make a huge profit margin by desynthesizing certain items. When a new item comes out and it has certain requirements to craft it, certain materials that become super valuable, you can look for a cheaper overproduced item that has that material in it, break it down, get that item, and sell it for a massive profit. Another great benefit of this skill is that you can actually break down dungeon items, getting valuable materials for them. In fact, some dungeon items have to be broken down to get certain rare materials that you can use to craft with. So it might be the only way to get a certain type of profit. A lot of people don't know about desynthesis, but it is a vital skill to have as a crafter. If you're just starting off crafting, it can be even more vital, as you can break down things you've made that are worthless and reuse materials. I really can't stress enough on how valuable that skill is, so it's a good thing to get if you really want to make a lot of gil. Now, before I end my video, I'm going to go over one honorable mention, and that is treasure maps. Treasure maps can give you an incredible amount of gil because a lot of the items in there are very valuable and very rare. The problem is you have to split it with your team with the chance of getting it. So it's really best for free companies to try to earn a lot of gil with. You can definitely do older treasure maps by yourself, but if you try to go into the dungeon with it will sink you down. So you need some friends with you at least. A few might cut it for a little bit, but a full party will really help you. So if you're trying to make a lot of gil for a free company, maps are a very viable way of making gil. Well, that does it for my video tutorial on how to make gil. Please check out my other tutorials or machinima as you wish. This is Dare Skybound signing off.